One day, my dad took me on a trip to Canada so we could eat lunch over there. And whenever we went to Canada, we had to go through the border. But before you can get through the border, whenever you're underage, so a minor, you had to have a letter from a separate parent saying that you didn't kidnap me or any of that. My two older brothers had those letters, and the people at the border didn't ask. But whenever I went, they decided not to waste their time and write those letters, and then they asked for it. Howdy, my name's Caleb Stegall, and today we have lost a very important person in most of our lives. The first thing I'll be talking about is why he was such a great friend. The next thing I'll be talking about is why he was such a great role model. And the third thing I'll be talking about is why he was such a great grandfather. The first thing I'll be talking about is why he was a great friend. Whenever he was in high school, he was on the football team, he was a lineman. So he didn't have too many friends, but he still had friends. And he was always willing to go with them, go on ski trips. He just had a blast, and he was very kind and generous and always helped them out. The next thing he did, before he was married, my mom and him were friends, of course, and my mom decided to go on a road trip. While she was on this road trip, before that, she got my dad's number just in case if anything went wrong. Then, whenever my mom left, I can't remember where she was at, but her timing belt went out. And so she had to call my dad because she had no one else to call. And my dad, of course, drove all the way to where she was at and fixed her timing belt. Now, my mom usually says, "Oh, your father has great timing." And during his marriage, we always made a joke, my mom did. "Oh, yeah, your dad doesn't have too many friends, but he made his own." And of course, that means all four of his children. Of course, he still has other friends that he helps and they help him. He's always been a great friend and a great husband. The next thing I'll be talking about is why he was a great role model. So, he was a great role model in my life because he always taught other people and me things that we didn't know. An example, he taught me how to ride a bicycle. No, most people think that's easy whenever you get older, of course. But I did not know how to ride my bicycle whenever I was 4 or 5 years old, and I would try and ride and I would just fall over. And of course, I was a little turd back then. I got very upset and I quit. My dad did not let me quit, and he always helped. The next thing he taught me how to do, he taught me how to fish. Of course, I was very impatient. I disliked fishing very much. I used to think it was dull, boring. I was very impatient and I just wanted to go climb a tree or do something. The third thing that he taught me to do was hunt. Most people don't enjoy guns or shooting guns, but in our family, we love hunting. We love hunting for the sport. We love eating wild meat. It's always great to go hunting. My dad taught me how to hunt. One story that is the most memorable was whenever I was 12 or 13, I was in a cabin with him and there was been an elk coming out. Of course, we were allowed to shoot it. It was a Texas elk. So you didn't have to have anything for it except for your hunting license, which I had, which was only $10. Whenever we were there, it was coming out at 10 in the morning. So it would eat breakfast, then it would leave. It didn't ever show up until 11:30. Of course, I was butt naked in underwear, so not butt naked. I was in my underwear, and my dad said, "Oh, come on, let's get up, let's shoot him." This elk was out there. My dad got his 708 gun, so a rifle, and he gave me a 30-30 iron sights to use. And I asked him if I could shoot it first, give me one shot. And my dad said yes. Of course, iron sights at such a long distance was very hard to shoot. So whenever I took my first shot, it killed the elk. And so I had a cow elk, and my dad taught me how to hunt and do all those things. The third thing I'll be talking about is why he was such a great grandfather. He was a great grandfather. One thing that he did with his first granddaughter, he was in the New Life parking lot with his motorcycle because his truck was doing work, and While he was riding around, Hadley wanted to ride, his first granddaughter. And of course, he doesn't ever say no, and so they rode together on their first motorcycle ride. It was just around the parking lot, but Hadley thought it was the greatest thing, and she was just having a ball. The next thing that my father was great at, being a grandfather, was teaching other children how to fish. And of course, he has a heart for that. Whenever he fished with Hadley, of course, she had a little My Little Pony fishing rod. So it was real small, and they were fishing for perch. And first few seconds, they caught a perch, and of course, Hadley was throwing a fit because she didn't like the fish taking it away from her fishing rod away from her. She was about 1 year old, and so she didn't know any better. And that day, she caught 2 or 3 fish, and it was just an amazing day for Hadley. Another thing my dad was great at, being a grandfather, was teaching her how to be kind. Because whenever she was at our house, she used to throw baby dolls, of course. I thought that was fine, but Grandpa taught her how to love on those baby dolls, and she just hugs on those now, and she just loves them. The third thing I'll be talking about. Oh, that's all of them. So, do y'all remember the story I was telling at the start? The one about Canada. Yes. So, whenever we were in Canada, my dad didn't have the letter that he was supposed to have. And so they questioned me, and we got to go into Canada and eat lunch. Today, we have talked about one of the most important men in my lives, my father. The first thing we talked about is his perfect way of being a friend. The second thing I talked about was the way he was a great role model. And the third thing I talked about was he being the greatest grandfather.